Alrighty, we should be live. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a second, just so all my stuff loads, and then let my notifications go out. Let's see. Are we good? Alrighty. All right, we are good to go on that. And hopefully we don't have any internet connection problems today. Last time we tried to do a public stream, internet was all over the place. We couldn't even make it out the first couple minutes. But I think we are good to go today. So just going to give it another couple minutes, or about a minute or two here, just to let the notifications go out, let everyone know we are live and we are doing this thing. And then, of course, we're going to go ahead and get straight to it. So I hope you guys do enjoy. We got a lot to talk about. We have a lot to talk about today. Of course, we have Bitcoin to talk about. We got Luna to talk about a little bit. I'm going to do some analysis on pretty much all of our alts, our major alts. It's going to be a busy one. Today is definitely going to be a busy stream, but I know you guys are definitely probably in a position where you are a little bit nervous, a little bit worried. And so, of course, I want to do my best by you guys to update you on my thoughts and let you know what I'm thinking, how I'm feeling, and going forward, what the game plan is for me. So with that said, of course, let's go ahead and let's get into it. So of course, what we're going to start off today is let's just get a general market update. I'm going to look at Bitcoin. We're going to do a little bit of technical, a little bit of fundamental analysis on everything. I'm really just going to talk about my overall state of mind here. And then, we're just going to have a bit of a sit down. I'm sure Unhinged Tyler is going to come out at some point, or I'm just going to go on a little bit of a maniacal rant. But let's do it. Okay. Also, I'm pretty pissed. I got these lights. They work, but when I turn them on, my camera focuses on me and they get really bright and makes me look weird. Super annoying. Anyway, so what we're going to start off with again is we're just going to take a look at Bitcoin. I want to take a look at the short term. I want to let you guys know, my thoughts about everything right now, my overall kind of how I'm feeling about this right now, what I'm expecting and more. Okay. And I think that's the best place to start at. Okay. So today, what we do see, of course, is that we are in a position in which we are seeing a bit of consolidation. We did see the rest of the market dump off a bit. We can see total 2, which is just our altcoin market in general, tanking pretty hard. And I'm sure if we pull up total 3, which is every single crypto minus Bitcoin and Ethereum, I'm assuming this thing's getting wrecked. Yeah, total 3 is down about 10%. Vic, chill. Okay. And so we can see things have been a little bit ugly. Now, if we do go ahead and I'm gonna just get this pulled up, we look at the CPI data. We did see, of course, that the US CPI data was at 8.3, expected was 8.1%. And so, of course, last month. Yeah. So what we need to pay attention to is the fact that although we didn't miss, this was definitely a good sign. And we're going to go into this. We're going to take a little bit of a look at the CPI data because I think that there are implications of what it could mean for the future. So all of that in today's stream. But of course, again, let's start with Bitcoin. So looking at Bitcoin, of course, since it does control the entire market in itself, we can see that we have been seeing quite the battle at $29,200. Now, one thing that I told you guys was that a lot of people were kind of just throwing out these random numbers. And although that's important, and although it is important to kind of do a very good analysis on just, general market sentiment, realistically, it's a very clear picture of what's going on at this point. Okay. And so I think we need to start to get really prepared for what, the possible outcome is. So looking at Bitcoin, what we can see is that we do have this clear level of support. Obviously, we have the June, July, August lows from back in 2021, in which we were really starting to see that that massive capitulation where a lot of people are very, very concerned about what's going on right now, right? And the next thing you know, we start to see the metaverse taking over. We see Mana, Decentraland Mana, Sandbox. We start to see all of those ones really catching momentum, leading us out of this this market in which we were in back here. Now, what we can see is that we have now come back down to revisit this key level of support, and this is the battle of a lifetime, okay? Now, what we can see is that there have been multiple touches on this point, right? We can see we saw the first pullback here, we saw the second pullback here, and we are now at a third strong major macro pullback at this point. And so what I would go ahead and say is that although $30,000 is lost, what I would say is while we are above $29,200, we are still holding the macro level of support, and that is just what it is. Now, whenever we look at some of our indicators and whenever we look at some of the things, everything does point to say that we are very overextended at this point, and we are getting cases of bullish divergence to support that. Now, the biggest case of bullish divergence, which I'm noticing, is from our January lows previously back here to where we are now. Of course, we have set that lower low, but on terms of our daily RSI, we are still at the higher low. And now, whenever we see a case of bullish divergence of this nature, it does sometimes say that there is the possibility for us to see a continuation towards the upside. These divergences aren't things to ignore. These divergences aren't things that you just say, oh, well, they don't matter, because no, they do, right? Whenever we see divergences, they are clear pictures of what could possibly be on the horizon due to, bearish plus bullish sentiment. Whenever we compare the bears to the bulls, who's winning? And now what we can see is that although we are tanking and we are capitulating, right now seeing a case of bearish divergence or bullish divergence mixed into the, establishment of support on top of this key support level until we lose $29,200 and stay below it. I'm not that concerned about us falling another 10, 20, 30% for Bitcoin because this key support level is holding. So today, right now, at this exact moment, I would be willing to say that, yeah, we are still okay. Now, does that mean we're going to stay okay? No, it doesn't. It definitely doesn't mean we're going to stay okay. Okay. If we do look at some things like the weekly Bollinger Bands, one thing we can see is that we are sitting at that point in which we are overextended to the downside. Now, this does further support the idea that we very possibly could find a bottom relatively soon. We're at a key level of support. We're seeing bullish divergence on the daily RSI. We're seeing bullish divergence on the weekly RSI at this point, as you can see. And all of these things just kind of tell us that, we are in a position to say we're overextended to the downside. From a technical based perspective. Okay. And so I think at any given point, we could establish a support and start to come back up to retest our 20-week SMA, which is currently at about $38,000. But who's to say that's going to happen? I don't know. Okay. So overall, my opinion is that right now, again, while we're above $29,200 and we're holding it, it does seem similar to what we saw back here, that we are still okay. But the issue is that we can't solely rely on the technical indicators in which we are seeing right now. We can't solely rely on the RSI. We can't solely rely on the MACD. We can't solely rely on bullish divergences because this is not the same market here as it was here. It's not the same market here as it was here, and it's not the same market for sure that it was back here. We're in a position in which the overall macro environment is going through a moment of turmoil. It's going through downturn. It's going through a point in time in which CPI, the CPI data showed that inflation has not peaked yet, right? There is the possibility that we plateau here and that the Fed will have to, become even more hawkish in their efforts to lower this inflation. And so for those reasons, we are in a macro environment in which has the capabilities of definitely putting us in a situation that says, these indicators won't stop what is going to happen. So I want to talk to you guys about technical price targets, and I want to talk to you about breakdown targets if, just the results of this market do continue to push this price to the downside. Because again, although we do look like we are bottoming out, in my opinion, based off of the technicals, this macro environment can very possibly continue to push us to the downside. And I think it is important that we start to look at some of these levels to decide, okay, where could we possibly see this thing going? So what I want to start off by doing is looking at some of our historical moving averages and the ones that have served as the most important. Now, what I would go ahead and say is that if we do go ahead and we just pull up this 200 moving average here, this is what I would go ahead and consider to be the bottom. Now, currently speaking, I'm looking at this thing bottoming out at about $22,200. Now, the reason why I believe so, that this could very possibly be the worst case scenario is us pushing down to 22,000 is just due to history, right? Historically speaking, the amount of liquidity in which we see come in at the 200 moving average has been absolutely ridiculous. People are willing, no matter what is going on in the world, to purchase at the 200 moving average. And I don't see it being much different today. Now, some people can say, well, this is a different time in the market. And sure, but I think it's important to make comparisons. And I want to make a comparison to what we saw back on March 21st of 2020 when we saw this first massive capitulation down to this 200 moving average. We have to think about the time in which was going on, in which we saw the blank virus going around, and of course did create probably the most uncertainty in the world that we had ever seen. Not only were we, concerned about, the economy, which was, of course, a main focus. Many people were concerned about the livelihood of our existence, right? Everyone was concerned about this killer virus that is allegedly killing hundreds of millions of people. And it got to a situation in which we didn't even really care about what was going on in the markets. We were concerned about what was going on in the real world. We were concerned about if we would make it to see the next year, right? Because realistically, not everyone necessarily, but majority of people were concerned about what the long-term outcome of that virus could be. And considering the fact that we were at that point in the market, considering that we were at that point in the world, and we saw this 200 moving average holding up. Considering after the largest amount of capitulation in which we had ever seen after a period of nothing but consolidation and boringness led to that 200 moving average, and even still at that point, after that massive capitulation that wiped out the majority of retail investors, we still saw this 200 moving average hold. I can't imagine that a time like right now is that much worse than what we've seen historically, right? Sure, inflation is bad. Realistically, coming in at 8.3% does show that it is slowing. The rate of inflation is slowing, meaning that the Fed's, overall their mission, their goals, the things they're doing right now is making progress. It realistically is saying that we are in a position to likely see that inflation, in my opinion, slowing down, which once we see that peak and we can start to see it downturning, I do believe we will start to see a lot more sentiment, bullish sentiment in the market. And, of course, we are still fighting with things such as the war in Ukraine, and blessed and prayers out to those affected by it. But realistically, that is something as well that is not new news. It's not something that is still being of super concern to the people in the market right now. And so, though I do believe this is the effect of the current market and the current macro things that are happening, I definitely don't believe them to be much worse realistically than the uncertainty we saw back here or what we saw back here for Bitcoin itself in general. So when you mix in all of those things, what I would go ahead and say is that $22,000 is around where I believe 21 at this moment, it is $21,800 is where I believe the bottom would be. And I don't believe we will go much lower than it if we get down to it in general. So looking at that and kind of keeping that in mind, that's my general thesis. Now, if I'm wrong, I will admit when I'm wrong. I have no way of knowing. And let me kind of pause and just make it clear that I don't fucking know if it's going to fall below the 200 moving average. It's just my belief that that is around where the bottom would be. It would be around $2.2 thousand, and that does align with our previous cycle peak, which would say that generally speaking, we do retest key points of resistance. So sure, maybe we come back to this general vicinity and continue to the top side. That's my thesis. Now, granted, being that that is my thesis, I want to talk about how does that now impact my psychological motivation to invest, okay? So one thing that I always consider when I'm investing is risk versus reward, right? I always talk about that. I think that's the most important thing to focus on as an investor. Let's get a good one here. Let's see. This is fine. So one thing that I always focus on as an investor is what is my risk to reward, right? If I'm saying wanting to invest into a crypto, I'm going to say, what is the risk and what is the reward? If the risk of that crypto is it falling 100%, and the reward is maybe 2 or 3%, clearly my risk to reward ratio is just simply not in my favor. Why would I invest? And I think that majority of people do that in all aspects of life. And so whenever I look at Bitcoin, I start to kind of measure out, okay, what is my risk here? Like realistically, like what is my risk? And considering the fact that I'm under the belief that $22,000 to $20,000 would be the absolute bottom, and we put that into a perspective of how far that is, that's somewhere around 27 to 30% from here. But whenever I start to consider the long-term outlook of Bitcoin, I am still bullish over the next 10 years, as I was a year ago, as I was 6 months ago, as I was 4 months ago. I still have the conviction that I believe Bitcoin will hit $89,000, $90,000, $100,000 one day. And considering the fact that that's 300%, 350, 400% from here, whenever I start to do those ratios, I would say that that's definitely a ratio that I'm comfortable with and that I'm okay with. And so whenever we see times like these, in which this is by far some of the most panic I've ever seen in this market since coming around 2019 or so, I would go ahead and say, considering that we are seeing the risk being somewhat minimized at times, whenever you put it into consideration of what we've seen previously, when you mix in that for what we could see going into the future, I am still very comfortable with accumulating at these levels. So what is my game plan and what am I doing, especially when it comes to Bitcoin and especially when it comes to Ethereum? What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to continue my dollar cost averaging. Okay. Now, what am I dollar cost averaging in? This is when we're going to kind of transition into some of our altcoins, because personally speaking, I do not believe that buying altcoins right now is a good idea. Now, could they very possibly 5x, 8x, 10x from this point? Yeah. Right. I mean, I genuinely believe so. Can we one day see a Solana that gets back up to $240 at a 5x from here? Yeah, sure. Very possibly. But what is the risk? Because whenever we start to put it into consideration, let's kind of do a little bit of denominating here, right? Let's kind of get down to let's get to the common denominator here, which is Bitcoin. When we look at Bitcoin and we consider what it's done, let's just go from over the last month. Okay, let's go over the last month. Since let's go from the first week of April to now, Bitcoin is down 36%. Now, what has happened? The journey, we will get into that in a minute. Please hold on. What has happened? And it's 36% over this last month. Let's go to something like Solana, for example. When we go to Solana, for example, and we go from that same week to now, we can see that it is down about 63%. We can further confirm the outperformance by Bitcoin by looking at Bitcoin dominance to show that realistically, Bitcoin dominance is holding up well. What does that mean? Well, what that means is that in a market such as this one, in a market that is very, 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 very nerve wracking, where people are worried, we can clearly see that Bitcoin is outperforming the rest of the market. And considering the fact that I'm under the belief, and again, I have this conviction that the bottom for Bitcoin could very possibly be around this $22,000 mark if we lose $29,200, which is 30+% from here. That means that Solana could still have another 60 to 70 to 80% more in falls before we do see some type of recuperation and, the gain of the losses there, right? And so considering the fact that the downside is still so substantial for many of our altcoins, I simply just believe that it is best to be focusing on, in my opinion, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, generally speaking, I would go ahead and say that it's just Bitcoin. I think in times like these, it is okay to become a Bitcoin maximalist, a maximist, a Bitcoin maxi, because it proves to be the one that everyone flocks to, especially institutional investors in times like these, because everyone knows Bitcoin is here to stay one way or another. And so considering the fact that it is holding up so well, that further confirms it. But usually I would just say Bitcoin. But what we've seen from Ethereum over the last week has been nothing short of amazing, in my opinion. Now, sure, we did put in the lower lows. Sure, we have just lost our lows from, earlier this year. But when we put that in comparison, and whenever we juxtapose where we are now to where we were last year, and then you compare that to Bitcoin, realistically, Ethereum is outperforming. And so, yes, does Bitcoin possibly lead the dance to say that Bitcoin comes down to these levels first and then Ethereum follows it down to those levels next? Sure. But it's simply the fact that whenever we are in a time in which we see the crypto fear and greed index sitting at a whopping 10 yesterday, and Ethereum is in a position in which it is holding up quite well at this point, I'm still under the belief that Ethereum is now for sure here to stay with even better reward than that of Bitcoin, right? You guys saw yesterday. I wanted to buy some Bitcoin, and I did buy a little bit of Bitcoin. But what was I really doing? My majority of my investing in. Here we go. Thought it was yesterday. There we go. Yeah, boom. Day before yesterday, I bought 2.8 ETH at $2,200. That is my actual main focus right now. Okay. I'm focusing on allocating my capital into Ethereum because I'm under the belief that Ethereum will hit $10,000 before Bitcoin hits 150,000. I think it is more feasible to say that Ethereum, with its possible merge coming whenever that may be, mixed in with its overall use utility and stability that is showing in times like these, is setting itself up to see a very, very strong amount of growth as we do exit this bear market at some point. Now, that is further confirmed again by Ethereum Bitcoin. Look at the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio. Look at the way in which Ethereum is still outperforming Bitcoin over the last year. Ever since we saw the bottom get put in 2019, Ethereum has still been outperforming Bitcoin. And even if it does pull back at some point, we are in a position to find support and continue to the top side. This should be a sign for all altcoin investors of confidence. This should say that if Ethereum's going to be here to stay, many of our alts, in my opinion, will find some success at some point or in one point or another. But my main focus is accumulating on Bitcoin due to the reasons we spoke about previously, and Ethereum because it is proving at this point and it is that it can withstand the test of time, and that even in times like these, Ethereum and the belief in Ethereum is still there, which is absolutely extremely confirming to me that the long-term outlook of crypto as a whole is still intact. Because whenever we think about this, right, if the long-term outlook of Bitcoin was bad, right? If we were starting to see maybe in 10 years, Bitcoin may not be here, what would that look like first? I think what that would look like first is many of our altcoins, including Ethereum, starting to get destroyed in times like these, because that is showing a lack of faith in the overall adaptability of crypto in the sense of smart contracts. Because people know that the future realistically is in smart contracts, it's in DeFi. And so the fact that we're not seeing DeFi, especially or just Ethereum in general, let's talk about Ethereum in general, failing at times like these shows that the long-term outlook for crypto again is still intact. Because if Ethereum's still sticking around, I still think that there is enough faith for this thing to make it through the long term. Just my opinion. And so my current game plan is that I'm under the belief that the risk to reward ratio is in our favor at this point when investing in things like Bitcoin and even Ethereum as well. Now, I think that the risk in Ethereum is much higher than Bitcoin. I think there is the possibility we do revisit, $1,500 to even $1,000 on ETH, which at this point does look like the possible fall of, a little bit more, 30 to 40%, rather than just around 30% for Bitcoin. So I'm personally willing to take the risk and investing into Ethereum more than I'm investing into Bitcoin, but I still do stand true to the fact that Ethereum is more of a risky asset at this point than Bitcoin is. But I think the risk to reward ratio as a whole is in our favor for the top two cryptos in the world here. So my overall opinion is that Bitcoin and Ethereum are still here to stay. They're showing strong signs of confidence in that the overall risk to the downside seems to be so minimal in comparison to the 10-year long-term potential growth that it's worth dollar cost averaging. My current plan for dollar cost averaging is that I did accumulate at this level in which we are here now. What I'm going to go ahead and do is that going forward, if we lose $29.2 thousand, I'm going to accumulate at every second $1,000 we lose. What I mean by that is, again, I'm under the belief that we are going to see this 200 week. I think I might have been saying 200 day, but I meant 200 week moving average. I'm under the belief that this is going to hold. So considering the fact that we're around 29.2, if we lose 29.2, I will accumulate again at 27, 25, 23, and then around this $21,000 level, if that is going to be where we go. I'm going to start a mass dollar cost averaging and accumulation at these points because this is where we will see max fear. And this is where I do believe that we could very possibly see one of the strongest bounces, even if it is back up to $30,000, $40,000, that could be over 100% for something like Ethereum, right? So that's my game plan. Once we do lose $29.2 thousand, if that is meant to happen, I'm going to accumulate at every second $1,000 on the way down. And then if we start to consolidate, I will come up with a new game plan of when I will be dollar cost averaging within this zone here. Okay. So I hope that does give a clear picture of my overall confidence that we have in Bitcoin and that we have in Ethereum. Now, whenever I say I'm going to accumulate, I mean that I'm going to be buying both Bitcoin and Ethereum every second $1,000. So if we hit 25,000, I'm going to buy some Bitcoin, I'm going to buy some Ethereum. We hit 23,000, I'm going to buy some Bitcoin, I'm going to buy some Ethereum, and I'm going to go back and forth. Okay, that is just my game plan, and that's what I'm doing. And if that doesn't hold, if we do start to go into the teens, well, then I'll figure it out from there. But my confidence doesn't waver. So that's my outlook on Bitcoin. That's my outlook on Ethereum. And that's why I am so confident enough to be buying in times like these. Many of you guys do ask me at what point do I think we could possibly see some type of bounce or see some type of change in momentum. And my honest opinion is that the change in momentum comes once we see Bitcoin dominance interact with this trend line. What we can see is that we did see the price enter into what was, a very consistent continuation pattern, which is the descending triangle off of an uptrend. We usually do this. We do this. Some people call this a bullish pennant. Then we break towards the upside. And of course, you can take this distance here and call it your break up target, which puts us right a little bit above this trend line here. Now, personally speaking, I'm not going to be doing too much until I do see this interaction here. I think there's a strong chance we do see Bitcoin dominance come back up to this point. And I think it is a very fair chance to say that similar to what we saw in October and similar to what we saw back in August, that once Bitcoin does reach this point, that could be the time in which we do finally start to see altcoins outperforming, which in this market is 1000% going to only come from some type of bounce in the overall market. We will not see, in my opinion, altcoins outperforming Bitcoin, causing Bitcoin dominance to go down if the entire market is going down. That's just not going to happen, okay? So if we do see some type of strong bounce in the market and we do start to see the price of Bitcoin or Bitcoin dominance in itself reach this trend line and start to bounce towards the downside, at that point, I may start to consider dabbling with some of my other alts, my Solanas, ADAs, XRPs, BNBs, Matics. But for now, while Bitcoin dominance is on the rise and coming back up to likely retest this area, I'm not dabbling with my altcoins because Bitcoin is clearly the place that is performing the best, okay? I want to simply buy into what's doing the best. And right now, that is clearly Bitcoin and, in my opinion, Ethereum. So going forward, that's my game plan. Dollar cost averaging at every second $1,000 if we do lose $29,200. What if, let's kind of talk about what if we start to see a bounce, right? Because that is still very possible. What if $29,200, which was the breakdown target I gave you guys about 3 or 4 days ago, what if this breakdown target does hold? Well, personally, what I'm going to have to see 100%, no questions asked, is an interaction with this here 20 simple moving average on the Bollinger Bands. Ever since we saw the correction from the beginning of April down to the downside, we've been rejected realistically one, two, and 3 times off that 20 SMA, leading to this complete capitulation down into the bottom side of our Bollinger Bands, as we can see now. And so while we are under the 20-day simple moving average, we are being rejected. And I'm not going to make the mistake of buying just because we go and see a bounce if we are possibly going to see even more capitulation to the downside, similar to what we saw back here, rejection off the 20 SMA. Right here, we recaptured it, which was great. But again, boom, rejection off the 20 SMA, 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 over and over and over again. Personally speaking, I will not be doing any long trading, expecting the price to go to the upside until we clear this 20 simple moving average and hold the 20 simple moving average. And there is absolutely no convincing me not, because even a little bit of a bounce here of 10%, which would look phenomenal, will very likely be eaten up very fast if we get rejected off that 20 SMA again, down to some of our lower price target levels, in which at that point I would rather be accumulating. So if I'm right and we do start to see some of these levels getting interacted with between this level and this level, that's what I'm accumulating. And the only way I'm accumulating to the top side is if at least we get back above that 20 SMA and we start to show signs that the bottom is in, the bulls are starting to take back over, and that we can expect some of these support levels to hold. Because until then, we are in a time in which we can still expect this to continue to the downside. Okay. So with that being said, that's Bitcoin, that's Ethereum, that's the general market update. And now let's kind of shift it over a little bit into some individual altcoins, and let's talk about where do I think they can go and what do I think their long-term outlook looks like. Okay. Now, a reminder, I'm not buying any of our altcoins outside of Ethereum until we see this interaction here, or we start to see this price of Bitcoin dominance collapsing below these key support levels to show that Bitcoin is clearly being outperformed by altcoins. Until that happens, there is no point to be focused on altcoins, because that is not where we will see the most minimized losses or maximized gains for the time being. But starting off with Solana, currently sitting around $51, one thing we can see is that Solana is also in a position in which it does seem as if we very possibly could see some type of growth relatively soon, or that does look like a bounce. Okay. And so what we can see, and let me make something clear as well. If you're a firm believer in Solana, you're a firm believer in ADA, you're a firm believer in XRP, BNB, Matic, VeChain, all of those, okay, and you want to just accumulate and you just want to buy them no matter what the market does, you have the right to do so. I wouldn't judge you for that. Personally, I'm more of a short-term buy the best thing at the best time type of guy. That's what I look for. I'm not more of a just buy everything all the time and hope for the best, because that's just not my forte. I get really uncomfortable doing that. But if that is you, now, times like these, when we are falling, do definitely make sense for that nature of dollar cost averaging. Anywho, but looking at Solana, one thing which we can see is that there is a strong case for a Solana bounce if we are going to see the rest of the market holding. Now, something that I noticed, something that kind of was a point of comparison, a point of similarity between Bitcoin, between Ethereum, between Solana, ADA, Doge, XRP, blah, 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 is that they are all at key points of support right now. And so I'm under the expectation that if we are going to see a bottom put in, it has already been put in. And that as Bitcoin did go down to that $30,000 level, as Solana did come back down to this key point of resistance and looking to flip and finally backtest this, let's get this pulled up, this previous level of support. Let's get this here. There we go. This previous level of resistance and flip it into support. If it's going to do that, if Ethereum is going to be able to come back and hold this key point of significance in which we are seeing back here, if it's going to be able to hold this previous low in which we're at from January of 2022 and look to put in a double bottom, it will need to happen like now, right? I mean, the capitulation literally needs to end now. Because realistically, the grand scheme of the market is that if we are going to continue to the downside, especially for Bitcoin, the correctiveness of, and the results of further capitulation will be even more dramatic, in my opinion, than what we've seen here. So for Solana, for example, even more specifically, one thing we can see is that if we draw to look to see where that bottom was, you can see that we are interacting with the previous levels of resistance in which we saw back here. There was a very clear point of significance and confluence here as we ran into resistance and as we did get rejected off of it at that point here. Now, not only that, though, as we did venture back up towards the top side, something that you should never ignore is the fact that we were kind of on this, everything was kind of on this Solana was kind of on this diagonal route to the top side, but the moment it did clear this $44 point here, that is whenever we started to see the exponential growth towards the upside. That is called a point of significance, a point of confluence, or just overall a point of revolution, right? We revolve around it. We find support, we find resistance. So what we can see is that as we did come down to that level, the liquidity there was absolutely insane. People mass accumulated at that key point for Solana, in which we did see the price jump back to the top side. Zooming back into the hourlies, one thing you can see is that even on the hour, we got a wick down to that level, meaning it was a very fast accumulation in this zone here. So considering the fact that at this given point, we did see this case of bullish divergence on the hourly RSI, right, in which we set the lower low and the higher low. Given the fact that on the dailies, we see another form of bullish divergence in which we can very clearly see the lower low established, and still we are still setting at this point the higher low if we do bounce, mixed in with the further fact that on the weekly RSI, we are seeing another drive of bullish divergence, which looks like us setting these lows to the higher low, this low to the lower low. Everything does point to say to me that Solana has enough of the technical indicators in position to see another, push towards the upside. But it simply comes down to, does it hold key support levels or does it not? And so my current outlook on Solana is that if we are going to see Solana's price lose the $44 level, do expect it to come back down to 35. And if 35 is lost, and 35 is a level of relevance due to this previous establishment of support here, or resistance, boom. If it does lose 35, I think we need to be prepared for $22 to be next, as that does become the next point of significance as the structural point of support. The macro Fibonacci's, all of those things are important, but right now, the biggest thing that I have noticed is that many of our cryptos are interacting with structural points of support and resistance. We can see here that this one little wick we got was from this previous point of resistance. We can see that we are respecting this previous point of resistance here. And so there's no reason why, if we lose $44, why we don't start to see these next levels getting interacted with. So looking at Solana from a technical based perspective, I would go ahead and say that our breakdown targets is that if we lose a $44 level, we do then need to expect to see 35. If we lose 35, we need to start to expect 22. Will I be shorting the market? Very possibly. Okay. If we do see Solana do something of this nature in which we do break towards the downside and we lose $44, there is a case, in my opinion, for me to say a short down towards $35 could be a logical trade, especially if that is, a 21% loss. I do it on 2x leverage, 3x leverage, definitely could see 60, 70, 80% gains. But I definitely would be taking that very slow, because as we are so extended to the downside here, there is a very strong chance we will see a strong bounce at some point, liquidating just about any short trades that do come in within these levels. Okay. So if I'm short trading, I'm not short trading any money that I care about. Okay. But overall, those are my breakdown targets, and that's what I'm expecting. And those are the key points of support in which you should be looking for. The point in which that I would be very comfortable and confident in Solana, right? Haven, and I agree. So this is a good point. TA is not going to save us right now. We just need the absolute bottom. I don't care if no one knows it. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, right? The macro environment is influencing the market, but there are technical analysis based just fundamentals that do typically hold up, such as the 200 moving average holding a support even in the worst of downturns in the economy, right? But what I would go ahead and say for Solana, personally, right, when would I be comfortable and confident buying is one, when I start to see Bitcoin dominance reaching a point that says that, again, altcoins are starting to, outperform Bitcoin. Likelihood is that is an interaction somewhere around this top up here, okay, around this trend line. If it breaks the trend line, then it's likely back up towards some of these higher levels here. But again, I would want to see that Bitcoin dominance is now falling and losing key points of support. Whenever it comes to Solana specifically as a price, what I would be looking for at minimum is the re-clearing back up. I mean, honestly, I would like to see it back above 80 bucks. Now, I know that's very far away from $50, but one thing we need to understand is that we are under an extreme point of significance, which is the $80 level. As you can see here, where was this point of resistance in which we finally saw rejection? $80. Where did we see this wick down to once we saw all of that, that first crash in January? $80. Where did we constantly hold up to and eventually use to establish the support to go all the way back up to $150? $80. And at what point could we see the continuation to the downside because we get rejected without enough bullish momentum? $80. So what I would want to see is that I'm interacting with Bitcoin and Ethereum until we see such a strong drive of alts that Solana is back above 80 bucks. Once that happens, then I will become more confident that we get back above this point of significance. But until then, I definitely wouldn't be getting too crazy on accumulating if you are going long with the expectancy that we are going to continue towards the top side. Now, sure, could you be accumulating down here at $52 and then $44 and then $35 and then $22 and eventually make some absolutely massive gains, of over 100% as we do retest 80? Sure, you very possibly could. But the likelihood is you are probably going to see an outperformance by Bitcoin and Ethereum in that same exact market until that happens. And that's why I'm not necessarily focused on altcoins. Okay. But again, those are my price targets to the downside, and this is the point in which I would be looking to really start to long-term accumulate and really go long on Solana. Is once we can get back past above this key point of rejection. Now, if we do go towards $22, right? If we do venture all the way back towards 20, I'm not going to wait for it to 4x from 20 before I start buying. I will start to look for short-term points of resistance and confirmations to say I think is a good time to buy. But at this exact moment, that's the gameplay. Okay. Let's talk about ADA Cardano. So ADA Cardano is currently sitting at about 55 cents, and it is in a free fall. Okay. And what I would go ahead and say is that the problem that I have with ADA right now, and the reason I'm not buying any ADA Cardano based off of technical fundamental reasons, is because of the key fact that we are not in a land of liquidity right now. Now, what I mean by that is I'm going to go ahead to the weekly charts, and we're going to kind of look at what usually happens in between $1 and what usually happens in between 40 cents. Now, what we can see, let's go ahead and make this a 4-point line there, and then let's make it a little bit brighter. Let's make it orange. I haven't used orange ever. Let's see that. Oh, look at that. That's cool. Okay, so what we can see here is that as we do come down towards this zone, of course, we did see a little bit of support establishment and the attempt at a bounce a few weeks ago. But realistically, this is a zone in which we do not see much liquidity. Now, the way in which you can identify that is just by looking at the history. When we see the history, we usually go straight up through the zone or straight down through the zone. And that is something that is of concern. Because realistically, these are the points in which people, when we're above this and we can hold above it, that's usually when people are the most excited, right? That is whenever people are really willing to get in. We see that support holding, and then we start to see those new all-time highs. We see this level holding, boom, we're off to the races. But the issue is that whenever we had seen this time in history, when we fell below it, we stayed below it, we got rejected by it, and entered into the worst bear market that ADA specifically had ever seen until, as we can see here, we got back above it. And so buying in between $1 and 40 cents is extremely risky because historically there has not been that much liquidity here. There's not been that much buying pressure, which is the reason why we see ADA literally just going straight down. So considering the fact that we are at that point, considering the fact that we are at the risk of visiting about 40 cents or so, and then really retesting to see if this previous point of significance is going to hold, I'm kind of just holding back on ADA Cardano. It's another one of the reasons I'm not dabbling with altcoins. What I would personally want to see is some structure forming. I would want to see us coming back down, maybe to 40 cents, holding at 40 cents, establishing some structure here, breaking out of the structure, whether it looked like that, breaking out of structure, breaking to the upside, clearing a previous point of rejective high, and really start to make some growth towards the upside. Before I get too excited, is there an exact level just yet for ADA Cardano that tells me, oh, I would buy it if it does that? No, realistically, not really. If somehow we do see the massive bounce back above 90 cents, then sure, I may go long again, right? Because at that point, the bull market could be in, full effect, and we could revisit back up towards this, these levels up here. But considering the fact that that's not likely to happen, and considering the fact that we are at a point in which we're going to have to find some stability, buying at this point, in my opinion, is just putting myself at more risk in the short term than reward in the short term. And I'd rather be focused on something like Bitcoin and Ethereum while they are doing better than the rest. So for ADA, we're in dead man's land right now. And so for that reason, I'm just kind of holding off on it, not really doing too much. Looking at Matic. Matic is in a very similar position, and it is a very, very sad position in which it's in. So, one thing I told you guys with Matic, and it has held up quite well, is the trading strategy in which I had. And now, when it came to Matic, what I said was that we needed to track the ascending wedge. I told you guys it's very easy to track the breakdown targets off an ascending wedge. How do you do that? You go find the times in which we touch the bottom side support of the ascending wedge. Here, these two, and this one. And then what you do is you just say, okay, those are my breakdown targets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to accumulate on these levels if I'm a long-term believer in Matic, which I am. And I'm going to go ahead and short from breakdown target to breakdown target to breakdown target. And I told you guys that's exactly what I was doing, and that's exactly what I did. So what happened is that I went in, I just had an automatic buy set, of course, to short Matic, as we talked about stream after stream after stream, and in my videos on Matic. And I said that, hey, I'm going to accumulate at these levels. Now, honestly, be very, very, very brutally honest, I did not do any accumulation earlier this week whenever we were at these levels because I was just a little bit worried. I just went in on Bitcoin and Ethereum. I wasn't accumulating here, but I did have an automatic trade set to short Matic if we were in a position to lose this breakdown target. And that's exactly what happened, right? We can see we lost the breakdown target. It went off, boom, and we are headed right down to our next breakdown target. And the issue that we have at this point is that once we have reached the bottom part of your ascending wedge, that's all of your breakdown targets to the downside. But the problem with Matic is that where do we go from there? Right? It's kind of a situation in which where do we go from there? Honestly speaking, my opinion is that if we do lose the point of 62 cents, which is our final breakdown target, it is a very, very, very bad idea to start to accumulate from that point forward because we very possibly could venture as low as, these previous points of support back here towards 28 cents, right? We very possibly see a Haven. We could possibly go into some type of Ada Cardano like event like this, right? And I just don't want to sit through that and be accumulating through that without any type of confirmation to the upside if something like Bitcoin or Ethereum is holding up better. So my overall opinion right now is for Matic to be on the lookout for 62 cents. While we're above 62, we are still interacting with our key points of support, and for that reason, we could very possibly see the bounce to the upside. Looking at the weekly MACD, we very clearly can see that off that exact level, we are not at it yet. We are still at the higher low with a significantly lower low at this point, which says that we very possibly could see that bullish divergence being interacted with. But until we do see this interaction here and decide, do we bounce? Do we hold it? Do we come back above $1 and clear this previous level of resistance and support? Or do we lose this level and start to venture down towards the 30, 40, 60, 30, 40, 50 cent range? I'm not going to do too much. It's another reason, and it's another great example of why I'm not dabbling with our altcoins other than Ethereum. Being able, buying in times like these are so risky because we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, does this key level of support hold? Because this is the last level of support. If it doesn't hold, is it going to fall another 55% down to some of these previous levels of significance? Or if it holds, do we see this strong bounce back up to these levels? These are questions that we need answered before we get to just randomly buying because the downside risk is too great for the short-term reward. I don't believe we're just going to see this thing just V-shaped recovery straight to the top. I don't see it happening. I think it's going to be a slow grind, and I think it's going to take some time to get back to these levels, and we will have more than enough time to get in. Man, I appreciate that so much, Haven. Much, 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 much appreciated, Haven. You have an absolutely amazing day, my friend. I'll see you soon. But looking at, again, what we are seeing, we're going to have more than enough time, in my opinion, to be able to get in on Matic or something like ADA or Solana as we do start to recover those levels, and going along. But considering the fact that the downside could still be 50, 60%, especially if Bitcoin comes back down to lose its own key level of support, I don't see the reason why we would be rushing to accumulate at this point, okay? Greed in times like these Sure, it can lead to long-term growth, but in the short term, it can lead to absolute catastrophe. Okay. So for that reason, Matic is another one I'm not really doing much with. While we're above the 62-cent level, I need to see how this interaction goes before then. Okay. Looking at AVAX, AVAX is another fantastic example of one that is doing something similar. I'm not going to break it down as much in detail as I did the other ones because I'm going to be just explaining the same thing over and over again. But my overall opinion with AVAX is that if we are going to come back down to retest these key levels, you can clearly see the key point of resistance here at about $31.89. If we lose $31.89 on a daily close, do expect us to revisit as low as these previous points of support, sitting right around $22. And if we do lose $22, it's just not a pretty picture. It's not really something that I'm too excited about. With what all's been going on, this thing is down about 75 80%, and I think there is still room for another 10%. I think there is room for us to see the $20-$25 level here. So I would really be paying the most amount of attention to if we are going to successfully hold this previous point of resistance and support. As you can see, look at that previous support there. And if we do hold it, then we're going to we'll get to that. If we maybe start to push back above like $50, we re-clear this previous point of support, get back above and start to hold it, similar to what we did back there, similar to what we did right here, right? Maybe we even hold this level, get back above it, back test it, similar to both of these examples. Then we continue. Then we start to look to purchase in the $50 level. But right now, again, the risk to reward is not in our favor, and there definitely could still be another, from where we are now, definitely still could be another 30 to 40% in losses. So it's not really something I'm too excited about dabbling with at this point. Okay. Looking at Luna. Holy shit. Okay. So Luna is way out of the bounds of technical analysis. Okay. Realistically, if we were going to do technical analysis on this, I would say we're kind of fucked, right? I mean, realistically, we do have a dollar. That level is a point of significance, clearly. If Solana goes below 40, what I would go ahead and expect is the next level to be about 35. I would say 35 is the next breakdown target, then 22. But looking at Luna, and that was just to answer this question here. But there is a point of significance on Luna at a dollar, obviously, because it's just a strong psychological level. But this is way out of the bounds of technical analysis. If you do want information on Luna more specifically, if you are looking for me to explain my thoughts on Luna, definitely do go check out my video that I posted. Let's go ahead. I can just pull it up here. Get this pulled up. Boom. Here you go. I did make these two videos. Yesterday, I made a video, and then today I updated that video on my current thoughts. So definitely do go check that out. But overall, what I would go ahead and say is that I wanted to answer a question. And what I really wanted to talk about in this stream about Luna was the people who are just saying, well, just buy it because it has to go up. Okay. And I think that's a fundamental error. Okay. So what we saw earlier was, great, right? We saw freaking Luna recover 1,000%. So there are people, somewhere in the world right now who just made 800, 900% on some Luna trade. So kudos to them, obviously. But what I would go ahead and say is that can Solana go to zero? Yes, technically, yes, probably no. Okay, but whenever it comes to Luna, would I be buying right now? Should I buy Luna right now? That's kind of the question that I want to answer for those of you who have that question, because guys, it's risky. Okay, let's talk about this. Can Luna shoot up 2,000% from here? Sure, absolutely sure. It could. But what are the risks? So right now, one thing I want people to understand is that what we're seeing from Luna, this is going to be more of a sit-down talk for a few minutes, okay? What we're seeing from Luna right now is not a sell-off because it was overextended to the top side. This is not a capitulation because people are taking profits. This is not a general retracement. This is not a healthy thing, to be honest. This fall that we are seeing in Luna is due to a fundamental flaw in the way in which the systematics of the ecosystem were designed and developed. And for that reason, we cannot expect it to have the same exact result and the same exact outcome of other cryptos that have seen similar size capitulations in the terms of they just crash a lot, like something again like Ada Cardano, because this is what I'm hearing the most of. So what I'm hearing the most of right now is that people are saying, well, if we do some, common computing or, calculating here, Ada Cardano has fallen worse, right? Ada Cardano's been down 98, 99% before. So who's to say that Luna, who's currently sitting down about, should be 99%. Yeah, about 99%. Who's to say that Luna can't do it, especially in a time where DeFi is king? I want to kind of, as a lunatic myself, someone who is very, very invested in a Luna, I kind of want to see if this is going to work. Hold on. Let's kind of take a little bit of a break. Let me see. Hold on. One sec. Does that work? Okay, it looks cool. So, as someone who has invested into Luna myself, I want to make things clear that this is not the same thing. This is not even of comparison. Why did Ada Cardano fall back then? Well, there were a couple factors. There are some comparable factors. One of the comparable factors is the state of the market. Back then, 2018, 2019, we saw crypto itself crash, right? So for ADA, as a crypto company that was extremely new, that had just nothing but promises, it is no surprise to see something that peaked so hard, see such a catastrophic fall. Why? Because everyone was saying, well, realistically, everything in which is going to bring this thing to possible, growth one day isn't coming anytime soon. It's going to be years before smart contracts, and it's going to be years before there's even utility. It's going to be years before there's an ecosystem. So why hold it now if realistically it's nothing but promises, right? And so for that reason, we saw ADA crash and we saw it go into a period this. Now, the thing about that is whenever ADA enters into a time of that nature, you have to consider the fact of why people sold and what would cause them to buy again. People sold because of the market's not doing good. So what would get them to buy back in? The market doing good. Get those retail investors to come back into Ada Cardano when the market starts to do well. Well, what are some other reasons I sold? Ada's nothing but promises. At that time, we weren't close to smart contracts. We weren't close to anything relatively good for Ada Cardano. Really, it was nothing but dreams, hopes, and promises. Well, what counters that? The production and the delivery of utility. The overall development, the progress of the ecosystem and the development of the smart contracts, the development of the overall idea and turning those ideas into reality, as we did see the Alonzo upgraded things like that. And that's the reason why, as the market's starting to do better, some of those retail investors who sold back then started to buy back in because the market's doing well. But not only that, though, the ones who sold because ADA wasn't anything but hopes and dreams, as it started to develop into what we could consider today as an actual utility case, we saw those same investors flocking back into ADA. And that is the reason why you can see these cryptos sometimes crash so substantially and then recover. It is all about the reason that they crash, not just the fact that they crash. So when we put that into retrospect and juxtaposition with what's going on with Luna, it is not the same thing. What we saw from Luna is the overall system. The way this works is something that, in my opinion, can't be changed. Whenever we look at the overall mint and burn function of the Terra protocol, Max, I'm gonna just need you to go watch that video again. Okay. I'm gonna just need you to go watch, just rewind a little bit. I went all over Solana when I would be buying and things like that. I think you might have missed that one. But whenever it comes to Luna specifically, the way in which this protocol works is that, again, as one UST, or if you have one UST, you have the potential to burn that UST in order to mint Luna. As you mint $1 worth of Luna, then of course that does put you in a position in which you can. It's no problem at all. It's no problem at all, Max. No problem at all. No problem at all. So we have to consider how that works. It is all Luna is simply built around the demand of UST. Because if people are consistently burning and getting rid of their UST or simply not buying it, that is going to consistently be putting Luna in a position that it is losing value. The problem at this point is that UST grew so high in demand. It was so extensively demanded. It was so overextended. And it was at a point where everyone wanted some UST. Is that as demand diminishes, it's not so much people just not using UST or not buying UST, but it's more of the fact that people are getting rid of their UST because they don't see it as safe or valuable as another stable coin. And while we do see ourselves in a position in which UST is losing value inherently, intrinsically, and extrinsically, it puts it in a position where that is a constant effect on Luna until UST supply is burned enough to a point where people find a point of balance. Because we have to understand, Luna itself is not going to recover until people stop getting rid of their UST. That is just what it is, right? Because every time people are getting rid of their UST, it's inherently hurting Luna because of the way in which the supply is increasing, which obviously diminishes from the overall price itself. So until we see that happen, there is just no way for us to see Luna's price recovering to 20, 30, 50, or nowhere near $100. It's simply just not going to happen. That's not how that works. We have to see UST itself stabilize before that can happen. Now, what's a good thing that we covered in the video is that Duquan and his team are implementing certain things in which I can go over real quickly that are going to help speed up that absorption of supply process. Okay, if we go here, I think it was maybe like 9 or 10 in the thread, maybe. Let's see. Somewhere around there. 9. Boom, 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 boom. It was here somewhere. Hold on one sec. There we go. So, of course, Duquan and his team, they are presenting things in which can speed up the process, right? And as we can see, what we can see, he said, first, we endorse the community proposal 1164 to increase the base pool from 50 million to 100 million SDR, which will they will also decrease the pool recovery block from 36 to 18. This will increase minting capacity from 293 million to 1200 million, meaning that the minting capacity for Luna itself, as people are burning UST, increases, speeding up the process. Because at this point, there's so much UST that people are, in simple terms, just trying to get rid of. It's overfilling. It's reaching it's maxing out capacity, so it's creating this very, very slowed down version of the protocol itself. So their whole game plan is not necessarily to stop people from doing what they're going to do one way or another, but more in terms what they're trying to do is speed up that process to just get it over with. Okay. And so, of course, they are taking steps, and they are putting things into effect in order to speed up the process to then get UST back to a point of stability, to repeg. And then as it repegs, maybe some type of confidence restores. And then we start to see Luna's price seeing some type of growth. But realistically, we have to understand that no growth is going to happen until that point comes. Now, not only that, though, we also have to consider the long-term outlook of buying now. Sure, it can go to $5. Sure, it can go to $6. Awesome. But if UST doesn't stabilize in enough time before it goes to zero, or we start to see that just the overall value of Luna is not perceived by the public anymore, people are not willing to purchase Luna, people are willing to trust UST, and the demand never comes back, it is just simply not going to happen. And we're not going to be able to see Luna recover from it until that day does come. So considering the amount of risk that we are at now, you have to understand that as they do speed up these functions of, increasing the capacity from, what was it, 18 to 36, I believe, the pool recovery block from 36 to 18, which will increase the minting capacity from 293 to 1200. You got to understand that is very likely going to increase the amount of burn that's happening, the amount of minting that is happening for Luna, which will then could further possibly pull the price down even more. Just because it's at $1 doesn't mean it can't go to 20 cents, 15 cents, 10 cents. It is still possible based off of the results and what is happening of UST and Luna in itself because of the protocol itself. Now, as someone did mention, someone I see in the comments all the time, so big shout out to you. They say some of the experts are saying that Justin Sun is behind the UST Luna crash. What are your thoughts? Someone told me to check his Twitter from 2 days ago. Maybe I'll do that while we're on the topic. I've not looked at this. Okay. Someone said to look at it from 2 days ago. Let me see what I may have missed. Does anyone even know what I'm looking for here? I don't really see anything. Oh. Mm. Yeah. I don't know. Of course, that could just be bad timing. Let me see what people are saying. Yeah. Kind of weird. I'll dig into this because I don't want to spend too much time looking at stuff I don't understand. Mill, just rewind like probably like 5 minutes. So my overall opinion is that sure, this may have been a coordinated attack. I definitely feel like it was, to be honest. Like if I'm let me just be vulnerable here and be honest. I'm usually not a big conspiracy theorist in crypto. This shit was much worse than a retail investor could cause. Okay. Like I feel like this was some type of coordinated attack. And we saw what Charles Hoskinson said. Do I know if that's necessarily true? I don't know. But it definitely felt weird. Okay. And so for that reason, that doesn't necessarily take away from what's happening, but there could be some type of recovery based on that if it was a coordinated attack. But again, I don't know. But the total understanding that I have at this point is that the downside from here is endless. It literally could go to zero. Do I think it's going to go to 0.0000? No. But is it possible for it to go to 20 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents, especially as they are doing their best to just maximize minting capacity to get the overall absorption of the UST supply out the way? Yeah, we don't know what the bottom side looks like for that, right? We don't know how much UST is still caught up and still set to be absorbed by the mechanism and by the system. We don't know what that looks like. And until we see all of that stop, there is no growth from Luna that is maintainable. That is just not going to happen. Now, the other problem that we have is many retail investors were in Anchor Protocol. Many retail investors and kind of the more new investors were invested into Luna. And now, as they got into Luna, they've never probably been burnt before, right? I mean, realistically, if we say some of them got in early at some point this year, they saw nothing but growth. And the problem that we have at this point is many of them who say invested $1,000, they got $1 left, right? If they invested $1,000 around this point somewhere, they got $1 left. And so the problem at this point is that as Luna does try to make any type of growth towards the upside, the people who are going to say, screw this, the mechanism doesn't work. We overall don't understand how Luna is going to recover from this. We can't figure out where the demand for UST is going to come from. We don't understand how Luna could recover. Those people are going to say, fuck it, I'll take some type of profit, right? If it goes up to $20, they may say, you know what, my position is 20 times bigger than it was down here. I'm going to just get out. Okay. And so we're going to deal with all the way back up to, any of these levels, people who just say, well, I'm just going to get out because I don't know if this is going to recover. And this might be my last opportunity before it crashes back down to zero, right? So not only do you have a systematic function in which is causing harm to the price of Luna until there's stability established, you also have retail investors who are extremely nervous about their positions, who are going to get out any chance they get while we do try to see some type of efforts at recovery. And so for that reason, investing into Luna right now, you should not be investing any money that you are scared to lose in Luna because we do not understand or know what the bottom side looks like from this, right? We saw things like Iron Finance, and what it was Titan, right? Iron and Titan, in which that thing just went to zero, right? We saw a little bit of a bounce, but overall it was death, right? Let me see. Was it Iron? So we did see. I need to see something right here. What was the token? It was like Titan. Let me see. Hold on. Right, was this it? Was this the one? I don't remember. It was one of these, though. I can't remember what the exact name of it was. I didn't really look that much into it. Okay. But it was another algorithmic stablecoin that did the same thing. It went into a death spiral. And so what we saw here on that one is that they didn't have the amount of funds that Duquan has. They didn't have the amount of support and backing that this entire ecosystem has, right? And so they weren't able to recover. So sure, considering the fact that there is much more funding plus a stronger community behind this project, we definitely could see a recovery. But the road to that recovery is something that we have never ventured into realistically in crypto, and no one has done successfully. And so just because you're possibly chasing a possible 5x, 10x that could come, you're also putting yourself at a risk of seeing absolute chaos in your portfolio, which looks like us just seeing this thing crash back down to 30 cents, 20 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents, 5 cents. And so for that reason, it comes down to the idea that investing into Luna right now is probably one of the most risky things you could do in the market with some of the biggest returns in the market. Luna, if it goes back up to $10, is a 10x from here. Do I see Ethereum 10xing anytime soon? No. But at the same time, do I see Ethereum crashing 90% from here? No. So that's the measure you need to take. So if you're investing money you cannot lose into Luna, you are probably, in my non-financial advisor opinion, making a big mistake. Okay. So that's a Luna. And that's just kind of where I'm at. If you want more of my opinion on the overall longevity, what I'm looking for from them, all of those things in which I break down. I have 26 minutes of content right here in which I went over Luna. And I definitely do recommend you guys check that out because I talked a lot more about the fundamental side of things. Okay. But I would like to, just say that investing in Luna at this point is a very, very risky thing to do. Okay. So in today's stream, we've kind of covered Bitcoin. We went over why I think Bitcoin is the best bet right now. I went over Ethereum. I also want to talk to you guys a little bit about what I'm doing, my overall ideology, and how I'm going forward. So the best thing that I'm going to do right now is focusing on my stable coins. I have moved all of my stable coins into USDC as that is the one that I'm the most confident with. I don't really, I feel like this is the perfect time for us to see some tether bullshit happen. And I'm not really in the mood to take that on. Okay. So what I've done is moved all of my stable coin either into USDC or into cash. Okay. Now, personally, what I'm doing is I'm going to go back into my mindset of focusing on my strategy for bear markets. My strategy for bear markets is using some of my cash to accumulate at key levels of support. Now, I told you guys those earlier in the stream, so do rewind to those. But I told you guys, once we lose 29,000, I'm looking at 27, 25, 23, down to 21. Those 4 key points of support are my levels of accumulation. And while I'm accumulating, I'm also going to be doing some shorting from support level to support level to support level to earn extra income and to be able to maximize my gains and minimize my losses to supplement those accumulations with some type of profits. Okay. Now, I'm not going to be doing much shorting because in a market like this, when we fall in so much, that's very risky, but I'm willing to take the risk. Now, that's my trading and accumulation strategy. Now, my overall investment strategy is this is the point in which I do focus on my lending, my passive income, and my staking. Now, I was impacted by the MetaMask hack. I did get got. Someone pretended to be a sponsor. They kind of got me. They said, "Hey, we'd like to do an integration on our exchange." They sent me a lot of information. They even paid me a deposit for the advertisement. You guys know I do like one advertisement for a good exchange or like a good platform or something that I like, something that I would use. I do them on my channel. They got me. They even paid me a deposit. They made it look very real. They got something onto my computer, which I'm not going to go super in depth about because I'm still working around it or working with it a little bit. And I got my MetaMask hack. I lost my entire phantom passive income position. And so I'm still focusing on my passive income. Now, Phantom did drop quite substantially. So gladly that position was very small. But I am still focused on my passive income. Most specifically, I am focused on my KuCoin. I'm lending out some USDC and KuCoin. I have HODL, which I'm going to make a full video on HODL because I think that it is one of the better staking and lending platforms to earn some interest. I still have a little bit in crypto.com because I do have my 90-day staking period is not over yet. And I'm just going to focus on making gains in this market the best way I can. And I think the best way to make gains in this market at this point is by shorting from support level to support level until a support level holds and a key level of resistance is cleared, and staking and still working on my passive income and accumulating as I do so. And so for that reason, guys, and also all of my, many of my altcoins that I hold, a lot of my Ethereum, like 20%, 30% of my Ethereum position is on Celsius, accumulating more Ethereum. So I am still focused on my passive income, and I'm going to better my knowledge of passive income plays right now, while that is one of the better options to see gains in the market. To understand these platforms can go down. We saw Anchor Protocol get completely decimated, but at the end of the day, there are still some very, very safe ones out there, in my opinion, even if it's just Coinbase making 2 or 3% in yearly gains. So that's my game. That's my game plan. Adam, I did go over Solana earlier, just rewinded a little bit, not too far back. Now, overall, what I would like to do now that I am planning on kind of wrapping up the stream, I just want to summarize. We talked about Bitcoin, we talked about Ethereum, and why I think those two are the ones to be focused on. I went into altcoins and talked about why I'm not really focused on altcoins right now and why I think they're too risky. I went over the specific altcoins that I like, such as Solana, ADA, Luna, Doge. I didn't go over Doge, but I don't really feel like it. BNB was one that is just applicable to the rest. Matic as well, and AVAX. And then we went into Luna, talked a little bit about Luna and what all it had going for it and why I think investing in it is too much of a risk. And then again, we did just kind of talk about my game plan as an investor, about how I'm going about this. Now, what I would like to do before I wrap up the stream, I'm going to allocate 5 to 10 minutes of just talking to you guys, answering any questions that you have. Okay. Now, I'm not going to do Like, I'm not like, if you kind of say, can you look at this crypto's price and give me a full technical analysis breakdown? I'm not going to do that right now because I do just want to answer these questions. But I do plan on doing another public live stream in a couple of days here, in which I will be going into specific chat requested cryptos, doing technical analysis and things like that. So do stay around. I will be around back on live publicly for about 3 or 4 days. Now, if you do want access to me every day, before we do get those questions going in the chat, I do have a Patreon. I try to go live in my Patreon 3 to 4 times every single week, in which I will do, full coverage of all of my altcoins. They're usually about 30 minutes to an hour, 4 times a week, in which I also do post my trades. I do all that good stuff on the Patreon. So go check that out. But I would like to take this next 5 minutes or so to go ahead and answer any questions you guys have in the chat. So please let me know if there's anything you want to see. And then from there, we will go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, so chat is open for you guys. I'm going to get a drink of water and yeah. So someone says, are you about USDC? Are you worried about Coinbase's stock? No, not necessarily. I think Coinbase has been through times like these before, in which we have seen Coinbase kind of survive through shit times in the market. And though Coinbase's stock itself definitely could see some, it definitely could see a bit of downturn. I think USDC as a stable coin itself is going to be okay. That's just my honest opinion. That's USDC is like the only stable coin I trust at this point. Okay. I'm not concerned about SafeMoon, like in the slightest. If I'm being just blunt, genuinely honest right now, my focus on microcaps went out the window months ago, right? That's why you guys have seen, I've not talked about many microcaps other than a few that I like Dexy or some of those ones. I haven't talked about microcaps in 3 or 4 months right now, and SafeMoon's included in that. Now, I do have my own personal reasons as to why I haven't talked about SafeMoon. I've not talked about that on YouTube, and it's just not something that I really care about addressing. I'd like to just leave the past in the past. But with the current state of the market, with Solana down 30, 40, 50%, I'm not even remotely concerned about any cryptos outside the top 15. Okay. And SafeMoon is included in that. Let's go here. Don't forget to smash. What's up, Rasta Black? How's it going, dude? Long time. It was an amazing day, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I got to buy some Ethereum at around $2,000, so of course I'm happy with that. So I guess it could be worse, but definitely had better days. Definitely had better days. Now, one good thing, I'm gonna talk to you guys about this. So one good thing is so the browser extension that got hacked, whenever I got MetaMask hacked, I had that in that same browser, my Anchor Protocol account was connected to. So 2 days ago, when my browser, or 3 days ago, when my browser got hacked, I got nervous that they may be able to access my Anchor Protocol, and I sold all of my UST. I pulled all my UST off of Anchor Protocol with the intention of moving it back onto Anchor Protocol because, I was just going to create a new Anchor Protocol account in a new browser. I got a whole new computer and everything, and I was going to do that. But what happened is I literally removed everything off Anchor Protocol, and then before I could do it the next day, this shit happened. So, the hacker who did steal money from me, he stole $44,000 from me in Phantom. He saved me from losing $120 or $100,000 in UST. So that's always good. I guess there's always a shining light in the darkness, but yeah, so that's always good. What'll be your plan for alts? Go back just earlier in the stream, right after I talked about Ethereum, I talked about Bitcoin dominance and my game plan for altcoins on when I would be looking to accumulate them. So just kind of rewind a little bit. Dangerous Crypto. Hey man, thanks for keeping us up to date. Absolutely. Yeah, it was me. It was me. I did it. My bad, gang. You think this is normal bear cycle or crypto winter? Good question. Do I think this is a normal bear cycle or crypto winter? I'm not sure the difference. I guess the difference is just the time frame. Personally, to be honest, I think that this is just a normal bear cycle. I don't see us just falling for a year straight or anything like that, to be honest. I do believe once we start to see the economy looking a little bit better, just in terms of inflation data coming out better and just things of that nature happening, I do get a gut feeling that we'll start to see this thing recover, even if it's a consolidation for a couple months. But I don't necessarily think this is like every, Bitcoin itself drops like 90% and just stays there for a year or two. I don't see that. Altcoins definitely crypto winter. I mean, we're down 70% on all of them. But I have the answers. Any tips on spotting trend reversals? Bullish divergences, MACD crosses, and what's another good one? Your Bollinger Bands. Okay, if you start to see like you go from the bottom side of your Bollinger Bands, you get up to that 20 SMA, maybe get rejected off of it, then go back up to re-clear it, pushing off of a bullish divergence with MACD crosses and the stochastic RSI turning upwards. That's a good sign you're seeing a bullish reversal. And the opposite if you're looking for a bearish reversal. Hi, buddy. My friends lost almost everything. Big luck that I was busy to pay my wedding before the crash began. Hey, getting married definitely did you a favor there, bro. Been away a bit. How's it going? Hope you're all staying sane during these market conditions. Hang on, things will turn around for the better soon. Yeah, doing good. Rasta, I did have a fight. I know I don't really talk about it much anymore. Just because like for what? But I did have my MMA fight was about a month ago. So if you guys do want to go watch it, it's right here. If you look up Tyler Hill MMA, you will see this video right here. That was from about a month ago. But other than that, I've really just been focusing on this market and just kind of sharpening my skills, Advice on engine to cost average down. I like to double my position now that I'm down from 124 average cost to whatever depressing price it's at now. Okay. Inge specifically, what I would say is at this point, again, it's one of those ones that's in between. It's at a very look at the analysis I did on altcoins earlier and just apply it to Engine. Engine is at a point right now in which it is coming down to like its last levels of liquidity right here. So if I'm looking to accumulate on Engine right now, I really would just wait a while. Okay. I would look for some structure to form and look to see where support is established. My opinion, give this thing like a week or two just to let it find some structure. And then from there, there'll become a much clearer picture of, when we clear a key point of resistance, and then it looks like a much better time to enter. Or, if it just continues to crash back down to some of these lower 25-cent levels, which it very possibly could, especially if we start to lose these key levels here. Okay, so give it time. I bought 10K in Luna. I bought 10K in Luna at $60. This is hard. Yeah, man. All I can say is prayers to you, man. Like it's one of those markets where it's just, things like that happen and there's no way, nothing I can say to make it better. I just hope for your sake and for the sake of many people in a similar position to you that, this thing recovers. I had $5,000 in Luna at about $80. I was taking profits on the way up. But it's just kind of where we're at. Ever seen a crash like this? Yeah, I feel like I've seen worse, honestly. Like whenever I saw the COVID crash happen, I thought, oh, I said it. They're going to demonetize this. God damn it. Anyway, whenever we did see the crash happen back here, this was, in my opinion, like the worst day ever. March 21st. I was around. I only had Bitcoin back here. Funny story. I had, bought some Bitcoin at $3,000 back here on Robinhood, like a noob. At $3,000 and sold it at $6,000. And, one of my biggest regrets this day. But I feel like the crash back on this day, while we were all uncertain if we would even be alive the next week, it just felt much worse than this, to be honest. Should we buy STEPN NFT? I wouldn't be, but I mean, do as you please. Sorry, I'm just joining. Interested to see what has been said before. Will you post a recording of this for me to rewatch later? Yeah, this is gonna go right up. As soon as the stream ends, it's gonna boom, it's gonna go right back up. Oh, that's a good call. Are you from Louisiana? I heard your accent. Do I have an accent? That's weird. I didn't know I had a Louisiana accent. I guess a little Baton Rouge Lafayette comes out every now and then, I guess. That's weird. When is your next MMA fight coming? August 27th in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Come through. I did buy Solana at 55. Do you think it's going down more in the next few days, weeks? I think I'll buy it again at 45. Just rewind a little bit. Talked about Solana earlier. Rasta said, good to hear. Going to check it out a little for sure. Head up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thoughts on where Solana may be heading? Rewind a little bit. We talked about that again. I don't know if you talked about Matic. Yep. Rewind a little bit here. Do you think Luna might recover? Rewind a little bit. Talked about it earlier. How long are you in crypto? I've been in crypto since the end of 2018. It was the end of 2018, the first time that I started paying attention to it. I didn't buy any crypto until 2020. But I just watched it because I was curious. I was interested in it. I started investing in the stocks in 2018. And so for that reason, I was just looking and venturing into other investments. And I just found interest in Bitcoin and the way it worked. But I did not start buying crypto until the market crash of 2020. And any thoughts on Pulse Chain launch? I don't really have any thoughts on it, to be honest. I just haven't looked into it more. Troy, what's up, Troy? Troy, what's up? Where you been, bro? Where you been? I haven't seen you in a while. Thank you so much for the insightful live stream. Anytime. And do you know anything about Algorand FIFA partnership? I do not. So with that said, guys, that's going to be about it for the stream today. And I hope you guys did enjoy. Why this market is just crashing and correcting and doing so many ugly things. I am going to try to be here for you guys as much as possible. You know, I was kind of disappointed by some of my favorite YouTubers. As I was kind of coming up through the YouTube scene, because it seemed like in times where things were good, they posted a lot. But when things got ugly, you kind of saw them disappear. And I wanted to take on, you know, I wanted to beat that precedent. And I wanted to kind of say that, no, when it's ugly, I'm going to make sure I'm uploading even more and constantly providing my opinion to help out anyone that I possibly can. Really not a financial advisor, but I feel like I have a good understanding of this market. And I'm going to provide you guys as much of an unbiased opinion as possible. And so in times like these, I got your back. I'm going to do whatever I can. If any of you want to chat, please do message me on Twitter or in the YouTube comment section. And if you do want to join my Patreon, I do go live 3, 4, 5 times every single week where I do live streams just like this one. But at the end of the day, guys, even if you don't want to join the Patreon, especially while we're all losing money in crypto, I get it. Trust me, I will try to do live streams once or twice a week on the public channel, especially while things are down. But with that said, that's going to be about it for today's stream. I hope you guys did enjoy. I appreciate those of you who stuck around and stick around even through times like these. I will try to reciprocate that as best as possible, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.